A lot of people think of Russia and think of Putin as this gigantic country with a lot of wealth and power, and that's not really the case, Mr. President. Yes, they have nuclear weapons, but actually the Russian economy is pretty small. The Russian economy, for example, the European economy is about $50 trillion. That's their GDP. The Russian economy is only about $2 trillion. New York State in America has a bigger economy than Russia, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Russia's economy is also not terribly diversified. It's mostly oil. Putin relies on oil revenues for about a third of his budget. Now, why am I saying all this? Because the Russian economy is not in great shape, Mr. President. They're spending almost all of their money, about 7% of their GDP, to fuel their war machine. And the Russian economy wasn't that great, frankly, to begin with. And if you sit down and just look at the numbers and the statistics, you will see that the Russian economy, at one point, inflation was through the roof. At one point, I think they had 21% inflation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Hot News Today, your home for straight talk and hard truths. Today we're covering a fiery statement from Senator John Kennedy that's making headlines around the world. Kennedy says the time has come to choke Russian oil exports, and he's not mincing words.
Now, regardless of how you feel about the war in Ukraine, I think most fair-minded people can agree on two things. Number one, Vladimir Putin, who runs Russia, not the people of Russia, but their leadership, is a thug. He's a pirate. He has blood under his fingernails. He can't be trusted. And the second thing that I think most fair-minded Americans can agree on is that we would all like to see the war ended. President Trump has tried. And frankly, President Putin has treated our president, as I've said before in the Senate, Putin has treated our president like President Trump has taken the bullet train to Chump Town. He says all the right things when he talks to our president, and then he does the opposite. And I think he's disrespected America. He meaning President Putin. And I think he's disrespected President Trump. I think Ukraine is willing to negotiate a reasonable settlement. But it takes two to tango, and we're not going to have a settlement until President Putin decides it is in his best interest to stop the war. Not Russia's best interest, because I don't think he cares about his people. I think the war will stop when Putin thinks it's in his best interest. And I don't think he's going to think it's in his best interest until he feels the pressure, Mr. President. Because dealing with Putin is like dealing with most tyrants. It's like hand-feeding a shark. Okay? You can't reason with them. You have to make them feel the pain.
According to Kennedy, Putin is a tyrant who's only able to fuel his war in Ukraine because of one thing: oil money. He laid it out in blunt terms. And if what he's proposing happens, it could bring Putin to his knees. Let's break it all down.
I think if you look at the Russian economy, you'll see that many of the commentators in Russia think that, and this is coming from the Russian commentators, not from others. They think that Russia might be on the verge of going into a recession. And if you look at the numbers coming out of Russia, you will see that manufacturing in Russia is declining. You will see a lot of the consumers, ordinary people in Russia, tightening their belts. Inflation, which I alluded to, Mr. President, remains high, and the Russian budget is strained. The price of oil is down. Remember, I said Putin depends on oil for about 30% to a third of his revenue, and the price of oil is down. Their growth model in Russia, their model of sustenance, is based on the war, and they're starting to feel the effects of that. For example, in the first quarter of this year, the Russian GDP grew 1.4%. You might be thinking, well, that's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. The fourth quarter of 2024, though, if you look at the numbers, the Russian economy grew 4.5%. So clearly it's slowing. And once again, remember I said the Russian economy is based on oil.
Kennedy and 87 lawmakers are backing a bill for secondary sanctions. These wouldn't just target Russia, but anyone buying Russian oil, including India and China. The catch? Buy oil from Putin and you lose access to the US dollar and American markets. Kennedy says this could cripple Putin's economy and force him to negotiate.
The point I'm trying to make, Mr. President, when you're dealing with a tyrant like Putin and you're trying to bring him to the negotiating table, What you have to do is get him down and choke him. And the way to get President Putin down and choke him is through his cash flow. Putin, and remember, I'm not talking about the good people of Russia. I'm talking about their leadership. I'm talking about Vladimir Putin, the thug. Putin is only able to prosecute his war through cash flow generated by his sale of oil. That's the only way. Without that cash flow from oil, he can't continue. We need to cut off his money. We need to cut off his sale of oil. Now, we already have sanctions on Russia, and Europe has sanctions on Russia. But Russia has figured out how to evade those sanctions and continue to sell its oil. For example, India is buying a lot of Russia's oil. China is buying a lot of Russia's oil. But we can stop that. We have a bill, 87 of us have signed on, that would apply what's called secondary sanctions on Russia. And not only our bill would not only sanction Russia and its sale of oil, but it would sanction everybody who buys Russian oil. Big difference, big difference. It would say to those who want to buy Russian oil, if you want to buy Russian oil, have at it. Knock yourself out. But you're not going to be able to do business with America. And you're not going to be able to use the American dollar, which is the world's currency, to do business in America. It will put Putin on his knees within 3 months, and he won't have any choice but to come to the bargaining table.
Interestingly, Kennedy pointed to President Trump as being patient and strategic in dealing with Putin. He accused Putin of disrespecting both Trump and the United States, saying Putin talks peace but acts like a predator.
Now, President Trump's been very patient. President Biden, he wasn't patient. He was giving. I remember when President Biden said to Putin, we don't want you to go into Ukraine, but if it's just a little excursion, it might be okay. I remember that. What do you think Putin did? Remember, hand feeding a shark? He went right into Ukraine. President Trump, on the other hand, has really tried to be rational and negotiate with Putin and say, look, we need to have an amicable solution to satisfy both sides. Ukraine is willing. Putin has done nothing but embarrass our president and our country. The time has come to put Russia on its knees. And I hate to see it for the Russian people, but the time has come to put Putin on his knees. Get him down and choke him. And the only way you're going to do that is cut off his cash flow. And the only way you're going to cut off his cash flow is to cut off his oil sales, because that's at least a third and probably 40% of his money.
Now, Kennedy says the bill to choke off Putin's oil is ready, but it needs Trump's green light to move forward. He's urging Trump to pull the trigger, arguing it's the only way to stop this war once and for all.
We have no choice. Otherwise, this war could go on forever. Now, we have the bill locked, loaded, ready to go. We're waiting for President Trump to give us the high sign, because we want to stay together. The president's the one trying to negotiate the peace. But I hope President Trump will seriously consider letting us pull the trigger, because it's the only thing that's going to get Vladimir Putin to the table.